Welcome, everyone, to the Roots of Our Being global experience, in which our journey to the past becomes our quest for our future. Together, we will reconnect with our ancient wisdom and heritage in remembrance of our true spirit and essence. As our modern day structures dissolve, now is the time to invite and welcome in the powerful stories of the soul's journey of remembrance and renewal. I'm your host for this event, Amanda Kolbaba, and today I'm very excited to present Dr. John Ryan. Welcome, John. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Amanda, and hi to everybody listening. Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me. It's a delight to be a part of this, such a wonderful topic. So I'm very excited for our conversation.
You're so welcome, and I'm also very excited. It sounds fascinating. So before we get there, though, I'd like to just let everybody know a little bit about you. Dr. John Ryan, MD, is a professor of medicine and practitioner of energy and consciousness-based medicine. He is an author, Unity Field Healing, Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing, and founder of Unity Field Healing, a new quantum process based on conscious activation of the DNA field to support healing and personal evolution. He channels the Syrian Blue-White Collective, who support UFH and humanity's ascension by DNA enhancement. His title of topic for today, Sacred Roots and Sacred Branches. My first question for you, John. Many people are experiencing profound spiritual awakenings at this time. Why is this happening, and how is it connected to the deep spiritual traditions on our planet?
Okay, well, let's jump right in. So this is a very special time on the Earth. So the Earth right now is going through a very rapid shift in energy and consciousness. And the term that's used to describe this process is the ascension. But to truly understand the ascension, we have to put it in context of the bigger picture, why it's happening in the first place and what it really is all about. So humanity is at a point where we're beginning to understand our spiritual roots in a very profound way and in a much more collective way. There have always been members of humanity who've had a very deep understanding of the spiritual origin of humanity and the spiritual history of humanity. But for the everyday person who's living an everyday life, it's not where most of our attention and concentration is focused. So, of course, these would be, spiritual leaders or, monks in monasteries and people like this. They've had a very profound understanding. But for your everyday person, we've had fragmented understanding of spirituality and our history. And we need to understand that humanity is a race in evolution. It's a race that is kind of evolving from one level of consciousness to a different type of consciousness. And this is how civilizations evolve. Now, I say civilizations because we're going to talk shortly about other civilization, not just the Earth-based civilization of humanity, but our membership, if you will, or our role in a greater galactic family. And so humanity was seeded on the planet to evolve into a high consciousness civilization. So just like a seed will grow into a tree, humanity was seeded on the planet with the purpose to evolve, just as nature evolves, into a higher consciousness type of reality. And we would term that ultimate evolution an ascended civilization. So it would be a group of beings who live fully conscious of their divinity, understanding the greater galactic nature of reality, and understanding that our destiny, if you will, is to grow into an ascended civilization that operates in that framework. Now, when you ask the question, what does that look like? An ascended civilization is one that operates in a very high consciousness. So the struggles that we live in, what we might call the duality conflict of humanity, the good and evil, the light, the dark, the bad, the good, all the things that we live conflicts around, begin to neutralize, because as you evolve, you begin to understand that you're part of a collective fabric of reality. In other words, the human race is one. And so we're going to evolve slowly into, I shouldn't say slowly, quickly into a civilization that understands its unity, its oneness. And in other words, although we have different bodies, we have different religions, we have different social structures, we have different countries, fundamentally within every human being is a luminous light that is a radiation from the creator. And that's true of every human being, no matter how magnificent they appear in the earth or how mean or evil they might appear on the earth. We're all sourced by the same light, but we express ourselves in consciousness in different ways. And it's this expression of consciousness and the experiences that it creates that creates the school of duality, which humanity has to evolve through. Now, we're at a point where the nature and the energy on the earth is about to undergo a huge metamorphosis, a huge transformation. And the reason for that is twofold. One is humanity is ready. In other words, living the duality paradigm, what we would call traditionally karma, is losing its efficacy in terms of its spiritual purpose. Most human beings today understand good versus evil, and they understand when they're expressing good, and they understand when they're expressing evil. That's not true of every human being, but the vast swath of humanity is certainly in that space. And so we all do our best to be loving and kind with our families, to think of good for other people, all these kinds of things, which is the true, genuine purpose of karma, to teach. But we can think of that as a playground or a field of consciousness. And so it's set up like that for a period of time. And the souls that are living in that space evolve through that experience, and then they take their lessons from that. But if we were to stay in that space, karma becomes kind of an endless cycle, because every time we're born, we're going to do a bit more good, which has karma. We're going to do a bit more bad, which has karma. And so we have to come to a point where we close that cycle of consciousness and we step into a new frame of reference. And that frame of reference is unity consciousness. And so that's what humanity is growing into. And it's the real purpose behind the ascension process. Now, that's a big concept. So to say those words is easy, but to really integrate the meaning of those words and to understand it in a deep and a profound way is a process. And so what we're going through as a humanity is a spiritual awakening. We're starting to have experiences where we remember our history, where we remember energetic experiences from what we would perceive of as the past. And so, if you speak to people today, Amanda, so many people will tell you they remember past lives, or they're aware of reincarnational experiences, or they remember civilizations like ancient Egypt, but also civilizations that don't exist in terms of a historical record on the planet at this moment, for the most part. Things like Atlantis and Lemuria, which are in the gestalt of consciousness for humanity, but we don't have physical evidence. They haven't found things that have proven the physical existence of these cultures. Yet people have internal experiences where they do remember living and playing a role in these kinds of civilizations. And I just highlight that to kind of point to how we remember the past, how this awakening starts to take place. Now, as an individual who's living in a lifetime with, a body and a life to tell, and, we all have our own realities that we're living in at this moment. When you start remembering other lifetimes and other civilizations, you're tapping into a consciousness record. It's actually a memory. People term it the Akashic record. So we're tapping into this field of recorded information and experience. And so in that Akashic space, there's a history of everything that has ever taken place on the planet. And we're beginning to have access to that. And the reason we're beginning to have access to that is our energetic nature, what we would term our quantum nature. The way I describe it in the work I do is the 24th chromosome is beginning to expand and open. And we're starting to realize that our soul that lives in this body is our more pure nature. In other words, we're really spiritual beings having a physical experience, not humans trying to find God. It's the reverse. And so that light that is our soul that lives within us is the nature of our reality and our consciousness. And that soul has had many different experiences on the planet. And so, therefore, we're not limited to this one body, this one personality, this one mind. We are actually a whole sequence of experiences that our soul has lived through different incarnational experiences. And that means there was a time when the soul first came to the earth to start having these experiences. So when we talk about the roots of our being, which I think is such a beautiful topic, it's such a beautiful theme for an online event, is the is it's getting back to understanding how it all began. And the purpose of that is to understand then where it's all going to, because one side of the story is what's already taken place, but the other side of the story is, and where is it leading us? And so when we start having these memories bit by bit, one person at a time, we're starting to put together a record. We're starting to put together an understanding. And no single person has the whole record or the whole memory. It's something we can only do as a group. And therefore, we have to be in unity consciousness to achieve the goal of the memory. And so you can kind of see how that experience itself is teaching us to work together, to work in unison, to work as a community, and bring our memories in and bring our experiences in to help get a fuller picture, a more fulsome picture of the past. And that'll help us understand a new foundation of our history as a human race. So, an aside on that is we have to understand as a civilization that humanity is not in isolation. We're not the only conscious beings living in this vast galaxy and universe. We're part of a collective family of beings, conscious beings that exist on many planets in many different star systems, all through the galaxy. And the Earth is kind of earmarked as a very precious and important place that is the current planet on which this kind of free will evolution is taking place. And it's going to bring us to this place where we start understanding all the things we're talking about. And then we'll be in a foundational space where the way we live our lives is transformed. In other words, the fundamental essence of being a human being will be transformed into an ascended kind of a consciousness. And so, in that space, we're going to start living in a very different way. We're going to start understanding that we have to work together as a collective, that there are many things possible for humans to do that have not been part of our recent past, like telekinetic powers or working with energy to invoke healing and transformation and these kinds of things. And so, what this is invoking on the planet is what we perceive as an awakening. And so we're undergoing this spiritual awakening where these memories start to come in, where these awarenesses start to come in, where insights come in. Maybe sometimes spiritual beings from other places come in and they start having conversations with people. And all of this is part of this natural evolution. And it's a very natural process. There's a timing from a galactic perspective by which these things take place. This couldn't happen 1,000 years ago. It couldn't have happened 5,000 years ago. The Earth is moving in space through the galaxy in a rhythm. And so we understand cycles like how the Earth rotates around the sun and so on and so forth. But there's a similar system of flow through the whole galaxy, through the whole essence of creation. And so our solar system is just one of many in our galaxy, for example. And all of these systems are also moving in relationship to one another. And we have relationships to certain stars like Orion and Sirius and so on and so forth. And so there's a geometry and a fixed pattern of relationship that exists on a much more galactic scale than we're used to thinking. And all of these energies have an influence on us, and they're part of our collective reality. So as we go through this awakening, we're going to become more aware of our galactic essence, our galactic nature, our galactic reality. And people often term this our multidimensional awareness. And so this awakening is happening. And as humans, if we try to take those big lofty concepts and reduce it down to something that is everyday, what's really happening to us is we're becoming dissatisfied with a historical world, and we're being invoked to begin a transformation into a much more magical place. And that's not an easy process, nor is it a fun process, because it implies transformation. Just the way we can think of how a butterfly evolves, the cocoon is created, everything kind of turns liquid, and then eventually this beautiful butterfly comes out of the cocoon, and there's a transformation that takes place. It's a wonderful model for us to understand energetic transformation, because it's messy. The earth shifts are messy. The changes in consciousness are messy. And I don't think I need to convince anybody of that. If you look at the news and you look at our social structures and political environments and industries and control of the environment and abuse of the environment and all the things that are part of the old energy paradigm that have to be realigned moving forward in time. But the way they get realigned is we become conscious of them. And so the way we become conscious of them as humans typically is we create problems. And the problems highlight the issues. And then there will be a push pull. There'll be people who want to go further one way and people who want to begin the corrective process the other way. And there'll be a struggle that takes place between these factions of consciousness. And as that struggle plays out, eventually the light wins, the consciousness wins. So the destiny is predetermined, if you will. So, but we're caught up in this space right now on the planet where we're going through these kinds of metamorphic transitions. They're not fun or easy, and they pull upon us. And what we really have to do is find our way to relate to the experiences and pull the best from within ourselves out, and to begin to create a world that's based upon that internal consciousness and awareness. And it's something that each one of us has to play a role in. Every member of the human race has to play a role in this, because remember, it's a unity experience. And so on the screen of life, what will manifest are the things that support us in this learning and evolution. And sometimes it will point out things that are wrong, and in order to see how to make them right. And sometimes it will point out things that are right to help us affirm that and move forward in that direction. And so I know these are easy things to say, and it's very difficult to live in the paradigm of that transition. But that's the nature of Ascension. It's kind of pushing humanity into this new space. And so you can kind of see how it all fits together. We have to remember our roots in order to understand the moment we're in. By understanding the moment we're in, we can then gain an appreciation of where it's leading us. And we can start to see how little bits and pieces of things happening are all part of that future story. We could tie the new children into that story. We could talk about autism and the whole spectrum of ADHD and all these kinds of things. That's part of our future evolution, because these children are coming in wired up for a little bit of a different reality than the historical reality we were in. And so they're bringing gifts and experiences and teachings and things that the future will make clear. But for now, we're in, again, this maelstrom of confusion and challenge around all that brings. But everything that's happening is on purpose and by a spiritual design to bring us to that future place. So I'm just trying to, it's a hard thing to do, but I'm just trying to tie the whole concept together to understand how, the awakening, the history, and then the future potential kind of all fit together. So I went all over the place there a little bit, but I hope I answered your question.
You did. And I have to say, I love how you explained. You did it very well, very easily to understand. And yeah, I really enjoyed just listening to you. It was very well said. Um, a couple of things. So, yes, I just wanted to point out, yeah, it's very messy right now. It is so messy out there. And most of us are just like, we cannot watch the news anymore. It's just too much. And of course, there's certain people always on the news and always being attacked or, coming out with sometimes outrageous things. I think people are just like, yes, we are transforming and being pulled, like you said, in different directions. And it makes a lot of sense too with what you said, how why things are the way they are with groups of people wanting to go one drastic way and then maybe being like, oh, I don't know if that was such a good way to go, and then trying to backtrack a bit. So I can see us trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you is, can you give up? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but can you go a little, if you're able to go a bit more specific to the individual? Because I think a lot of people, from what I've been hearing from others, people are feeling a little bit powerless and also a little bit stuck. Even people who are very spiritual, who've been doing a lot of healing and working on themselves and understanding too where we're at and what's happening, but suddenly almost like seizing up, like everything has gotten a bit like they're just scared, like they don't know. Can you go a little bit more specific into how what these people can do, what we can do to help ourselves on an individual level and moving through this time of great change?
Yeah, for sure. It's such an important question, Amanda. And it's, I
Mhm.
mean, we're all challenged, seasoned spiritual people, newbies to spiritual information. Like there's a whole spectrum of humanity, but everybody has to learn how to navigate these waters kind of at the same time. And they're different. The energy is very different. People need to understand that because we're really moving into the crux of the transformation at this moment. And so the important thing to understand is we were born for these times. This is actually why we're here. People who are awakening to this kind of information, who are having these, past life memories, these spiritual experiences, interested in energy work, interested in personal growth, evolution, these are human beings who, when they were born in this lifetime, kind of had a contract, for lack of a better word. An understanding is perhaps a better way to say that. Your soul understood that the earth would be potentially going through this transformation. And believe it or not, we all volunteered. Yeah, put my hand up. I'm going to go be part of this. I'm very excited about it. Let me down there. Let me take it on. And then we find ourselves here in our little bodies, forgetting all of that, forgetting who we are, forgetting our spiritual nature, forgetting our soul, forgetting our purpose for being born in the lifetime, etc. And we're trying to figure it out. We're going trucking along, trying to figure it out as we go along. And no one gives us a user manual. You just kind of show up and have to do your best. And so, as this awakening is triggered, everything that was foundational to the reality that we were born into begins to get loose. It's like we were in a certain kind of a structure and the ground starts falling apart and the energy starts getting very nebulous and liquefied, and structures that were part of the old reality seem to be crumbling before our very eyes. Others we wish would crumble, but they end up holding on really tight. And so we want to do things to make them actually break down a little faster. And so you can kind of see how that whole dance plays out. But as an individual, what we have to understand is the most important attribute that we own is our peace, the peace we hold inside of us. And so, as we're going through all of this turmoil and tribulation, you'll see there'll be mental things that pull you, emotional things that pull you, fear that will pull you. And it will seem very, very hard to hold our balance and to exist in a place of integrated peace and wisdom. And yet, that is the task before us. That's what we have to learn to do. And so you mentioned people turning off the news and, just finding it all overwhelming and too much. And I say, that's perfectly okay. If it's disturbing you to the point that your energy and your balance are being destroyed in some way, it's very important that you initiate self care, that you do what you need to do to stay well. And so, if that's turning off the news or listening to very specific people who you trust in terms of the information they're providing, then that's perfectly okay to do if you feel called from that place of peace and understanding to participate in things. Like if you want to go to a protest, or you want to join a committee, or you want to participate in some kind of social reformation or resistance to bad ideas, then it's good to participate in that way, but do it from a place of integrated wholeness, not from a place of angry reaction and mental disturbance and all this kind of stuff. So we have to learn how to get to that place. So I encourage everybody to come up with some way of meditating or stilling yourself, listening to music, and just being in your heart, being in the center space. Do it in the morning, do it in the evening, do it in the afternoon if you need to do it. Whatever you need to do to kind of reset your energy. And you kind of have to think of yourself as a little bobble in the ocean. And if you kind of just set and stabilize your own energy, then the ocean moves around you. And that's how we have to learn to be in this energy. We have to get to that place where we can be still and integrated and at peace and in balance. And so, whatever people need to do that is the answer to your question. So, for most people, it's meditate. For some people, it's to do exercise. They'll do yoga, or they'll do other kinds of physical exercise. Breathing techniques you can learn, where you learn how to breathe and still your physiology and calm down your heart rate and all these kinds of things. Beautiful music and meditations that people can listen to kind of reset the energy. And so we do them all. They're tools, if you will, because the outcome of them is this space of consciousness I'm talking about, how to be still and integrated. But all of these things help us get there and help us stay there in the face of adversity and challenge. So that's number one. That's the most, I think, important thing we all need to do. The second thing is to understand that is the nature of these times. Like in consciousness, we have to be able to relate to the reality around us in terms of what it is at that moment in time. So we all want a better world. We all want to live in peace. We all want to live in a higher space of consciousness. But the world we're currently in is not quite there yet, frankly. So we have to play our role in helping it get there. And so whatever we can do as individuals to do that and to participate in the collective experience that way is good. So if you're an energy healer, you're helping other humans get to this integrated energy place, or release wounds that are affecting and controlling their human experience and consciousness. And so that's participating in this evolution. If it's having groups where people sit and meditate together, or have conversations about things that you can do in a collective way to improve the well-being in the world, off you go. That's the way to do it. If it's to participate in resistance to ideas and experiences that we know are immoral or wrong or hurtful for the collective of humanity in some way or another, then we can participate in those conversations or those groups. So all of those things are important and valuable to do, but they have to be done from a place of integrated presence. You'll see when people try to protest because they're angry, it's the anger that's brought into the experience. When people try to protest from a place of wisdom and integration, then that's the energy they're bringing into the experience. So it's why I always put step one before step two. And then, and self-care, we all need to take breaks. We all need to make a permission in our schedule, in our life, where there's time and space for ourselves and our needs. And we have to do whatever we need to do to take care of ourselves. We need to get enough rest. We can take a nice bath in Epsom salts. We could spend time in nature alone on a walk if that soothes our soul and it's something we're connected to. You can do anything you need to do to take care of yourself, and you need to give yourself permission to do that. We're raised in a culture where that's kind of seen as selfish, and we have to learn. Most of us, I think, are at a point where we've gotten over that, but it's not true yet for everybody. But we have to remember the importance of it. And it's not the same for two people. Like what I may need and what you may need at this moment in my life may be a little bit different, but it's whatever I need to do for self-care and whatever you need to do for self-care. And it will also evolve. What you need to do at this period in your life may be different than what you'll do for self-care 6 months from now or a year from now. So be very open-minded to its evolution as well, but listen inside. And then the fourth thing I would say is we all have to learn to listen in a still place to our own intuition. And this is a great challenge of the time. It's something that's a little hard to learn, I think, at first for most people, but we're all doing it. We do it all the time, even if we don't realize we're doing it. But to do it in a much more conscious way becomes important. So if we can learn to still ourselves and learn to listen instead of like just chatter and think and all that noise that goes on in our heads, then we can actually begin to hear. And we begin to hear the energy, the messaging, if you will, of the soul and the spirit within us, and it will guide us. So, for example, if someone is on TV and they're talking, there's a part of you that can actually resonate and know if it's true or not. But you have to be in a space of intuitive listening. The words won't tell you that, the energy will. And so if you're watching the news and you see someone telling a lie, there's a part of you will know that if you're listening in an intuitive way. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah, so we have to learn how to listen. So the intuition within us will guide us for, like, for example, choices we should make, or whether we should or should not do something or participate in something, or etc. Or it'll give us very direct guidance and lead us to the creation of synchronicities that will help us evolve on our path. If we listen to our intuition, it will guide us to things we don't know in a rational way or a conscious way. But we also have to learn to practice it. It's a whole skill of senses when we are listening to conversations, when we're listening to people on the news, to be able to discern whether this is all BS or whether this is actual genuine information. And then we can learn how to dismiss things when we know that they're not true or they're not representative of what we believe really in the core of ourselves to be true or right. And the fifth thing is, I always say to people, practice a compass of morality. People say there's so much information flying around, like, you're on the right, you're on the left, you're this, you're that, you're whatever, you're affiliated with a certain political party and all this kind of stuff. And I always say to people, the truth is higher than any ideology, the real truth. And the real truth is founded in oneness, compassion, kindness, mercy, love, care. So I always say, put it through that filter. If the way a person is suggesting we act is immoral, then we have every right to say, no, no, thanks. I'm not interested in that. And so we learn to refine our own beliefs, our own presence, our own consciousness in on the earth, that it gets to be in correlation with those higher principles. And that's part of evolution, if you think about it. Like, that's how we grow. And so the ideals that will become the guiding forces in the future are these higher ideals. They'll be the way things are done. They'll be the way decisions are made. We will respect nature in making decisions around things that affect nature. We will respect human beings when we're making decisions around things that affect human beings. It won't simply be about profit or money or political gain and all these kinds of things. It'll be about truth. And so that's why that seems so far away, I realize. But it is what we're growing into, and it will ultimately be the way humanity recognizes itself. And we're on a journey to get there. But the compass, I think, to use is that. And that's how, when I'm faced with decisions and adversity and that kind of stuff, I always go back to that. And it always kind of leads me into a very clear understanding of what it is I need to understand. So I hope that helps.
Does. That was perfect. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was really good. And I do agree. I've been working with a lot of people in regards to our intuition, because we we've been lied to so much, and there is so much information out there. And a lot of it too, I think we have to realize, is that this is somebody else's truth. It doesn't mean it's going to be your truth, and it doesn't have to be your truth either.
That's right.
And we do need to go back in and we need to start working with our own intuition, because it's our intuition that, like you said, it guides us. It tells us what resonates and what's truth for us,
Mhm.
instead of listening. I think we've sort of fallen into that trap of listening to other people and taking everything that other people say as that's it, that's how we do it. And
Mhm.
it's not that anymore because we can see how messy it is out there.
Yeah. And how subject we are to manipulation, right? Like if we're
Yeah.
simply just believing something because someone else said it, but the source of that information is nefarious in its intent, then if you start believing it, we see lots of examples of this today, where the person putting out a certain kind of an information is to destroy the character of another person or to hurt someone or to make them believe something that isn't true. That is the actual intent of the information. And so if you don't have that inner compass to filter your way through that, you get caught in it, and it creates really hurtful experiences for people and their families. So I think it's important that we all begin to understand that and recognize that, and even appreciate the fact that the whole social media storm is our teacher. The reason we're getting to learn that is because of that. And so, although it's easy to kind of, downplay it or be negative about it, we can also see the silver lining and understand the potential and the value in it as well.
100%. And I think a lot too that we're seeing outside is a lot of other people's projection of trauma. I mean, all of us healers, we can see this, and people really react to other this trauma and um put too much importance on it. It becomes too much of the reality, and it's like, no, actually what we're seeing is what we need to pull back and look within our own self and be like, you know, do I play a little bit of that narcissistic role sometimes, and when do I do it?
Yeah.
um so a lot of what we're seeing out there is just a projection of what needs to be healed within ourselves, and is not actual, like, I think, yes, we have to sort of shift perspective a little bit in how we view things out there, and then suddenly everything will change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it returns the power. You had mentioned earlier, people are feeling so powerless. And it's true, but that powerlessness is the confusion around all this stuff. When you realize you have everything in you, the compass in you, the wisdom in you, the light in you to navigate the path, it returns the power to you. And when you hold that power in you, then you don't feel helpless. You don't feel weakened. You actually feel invigorated and strengthened. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to really return to that space so often.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I just love how you're expressing it all. It's very clear and simple, and very easy to understand and digest. Um, Something just came up, and now it's out of my head. It'll come back. Let me just, yeah, I know. There's so much information. Um, that's all right. That's all right. It's all good. It's all very good. I think I just want to see if I can pick it back up as I go. Um, Yes, you're talking about, yes, redirecting, coming back, taking our power back. Oh, yes, I do remember now. So I think too, people look, the one thing too that is sort of coming to mind too is how important each of us are. But I think a lot of people don't see that. I think they look at the entire world and are like, well, these people are in charge and are directing the world. How am I doing it? And I think the importance of our own power is really important. And also the steps that you just went through about how powerful that is, and coming together as a unity. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit on that? I think it's more of people's perspectives of themselves and what they have to offer, and how it's not these people that have been elected or have made their way to these certain positions of power that are really important, that are actually directing the earth, that we all are, and how
yeah,
we can see that a little bit more.
for sure. So it takes us back to the concept of personal healing and personal growth. and self-reflection and all these kinds of principles and healing things that we encounter when we start talking about energy healing and consciousness and so on. But the truth, I saw this meme on one of the social media platforms the other day. Said, "What am I supposed to do?" Said 7 billion people. And it's a really powerful statement because you realize the power in 7 billion people if each person is in coherence with other people, or even a small faction of those other 7 billion people. And so we all have a role to play. There's no exception to that. And the nature of the role is different depending upon your energy, your soul's development, your personality, your history, all these kinds of things. But every one of us has a role to play. So no human being gets to say there's nothing I can do. There is always something you can do. And so we have to dismiss that illusion or dismiss that excuse for feeling disempowered and weakened. There's always something we can do. Now, we also don't have to take on the burden of the entire planetary change. So that's all that is a setup for disappointment because no single person is really going to achieve that. You're going to achieve it in a little microcosm or in a space that is personal to you. So it might begin with you taking care of yourself, you learning about your own consciousness, about your own strengths and weaknesses as a person, about your wounds that affect your behaviors or your addictions or these kinds of things, and starting to do the personal healing work that's required of all of us. There's, again, no exception to that. As humans, we all have our histories and our bobos, and we all have things to kind of work through and fix up a little bit. And so there's no shame in that. There's no illusion in that. We all have things to improve and heal and grow. And so starting to do our personal work is actually a step in the collective change. So maybe that's where a person is at this moment in time. And just giving yourself permission to really kind of take that on and work with it and do everything you can is your contribution at this moment in time. As we integrate and heal things, our paths become self-revelatory. So, in other words, as we start working on ourselves, we start to become aware of the things that are of interest to us or of passion to us or of principle to us. And we'll get a compass going. We'll have a sense of intuition that leads to synchronicities that kind of show me what to engage in and how to participate in this social structure. And so I might become interested in energy healing, and I might start participating and contributing by helping other people in that form, for example. That's just one way. It may also be to start a group to teach others to meditate. It might be to have conversations about healing, in a bigger context, have an online platform where people can join in from all over the world and have conversations, to do teaching, this kind of stuff. Everybody will your own experience will show you the path for you and then what you're meant to do because it brings you joy, it brings you positivity, it brings you a sense of engagement will be revealed to you. And so then that will be part of your path. And then so your role is to do it. That's how you participate. And so when you're doing it, when you're listening, when you're not making your own internal excuses, when your wounds don't get in the way of you participating, etc., and all that clarifies, that's the kind of contribution you're making at that point in time. As you really work through all of that, you may take a leadership role in some way, shape, or form. You might spearhead a little committee in your town or village to do something good for the village and its people. You might have a network online where you talk to thousands of people all over the planet, bringing new information and new ideas. And then that'll be your contribution at that point in time. It might be as simple as living in a space and making every day better for the people you run into while you live there. You go to the grocery store and you make the person beside you smile for some reason. You make the cashier who's stressed about all the negativity and the experience of working in the retail sector, and you do something to give them a little lift or a laugh or to lighten their spirit, and you leave them with that as you walk away. And so you can see how it can be little tiny micro actions, little tiny things, and then the whole process of our own spiritual growth and development and where that leads us and evolves us into. If you had said to me like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, Amanda, you'll be teaching spiritual things and about energy and consciousness, I wouldn't have believed it to be true. I would have thought, oh my gosh, no, like, I'm a physician and I'm doing my thing and that's my role in the world and all that kind of stuff. But one thing after another led to one experience after another, which led to different kinds of openings and understandings. And then I really started to understand my soul's trajectory as well as what I believed my life to be at that point in time. But you never know the outcome when you're on your first step or your 10th step or your 20th step. It's not a process where you see the end. It's a process where you see the next thing. And so we have to learn how to live in the moment and in the experience that we're in that day. And then take that experience and make decisions from that place that will make pathway for tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Don't worry about the big picture or the end game. Just think about the process. When I was learning that principle, I had a really beautiful experience. I was in the woods one day on a hike and I was walking along a path and I got to a fork in the path. It's so metaphoric. And so I'm standing there looking, thinking, ooh, I don't know which way to go to get home. Like if I go one way, am I going to like end up in the middle of the woods for the night and get lost and be eaten by a bear or something? And so I thought, I know one of these pathways is going to take me back in a circuit to the beginning of the path, and one is going to go deeper in the woods. And I didn't know which way to go. And I closed my eyes trying to discern the right thing to do. And a bird showed up, a little bird, and he landed on a rock right in front of me and he flew down a path. And I knew in my spirit that that was the path to take. And so that bird showed up as guidance in the moment. I didn't need the bird's guidance yesterday. I didn't need it the day after. It was there exactly when I needed, exactly at the right moment in time. And that's true of all of us if we learn to start communicating in an internal spiritual way with energy and nature and all that kind of stuff. And so that was the guidance I needed. And it was there when I needed, exactly when I needed. And it brought me the right answer to the right dilemma. And so I think it's a beautiful illustration for us. We don't need to know the end game. Just take the day on, figure out the decisions we need to make at this point in time, and let that guide us to where we're supposed to go. And if we keep listening to that, spirit will show us, consciousness will show us, nature will show us. We'll realize we're part of this much bigger system of energy and consciousness that's full of wisdom and guidance and love. And we'll learn how to participate in that space with the world and let it guide us in our individual roles and destinies. And that's how we get to our purpose and the role that we're supposed to play on the planet.
That's perfect. Thank you. And yes, the question that keeps coming up in my head, and I was like, oh no, I don't think I should ask him now, is probably what a lot of people are thinking is, when is this transformation going to be all done?
So the real answer is when we're ready. Because the transformation, remember, has a purpose. It's not like it's happening as a bad thing that has no greater goal or purpose. The reason it's happening is for us to be, and I don't just mean us personally, I mean us in a very collective way, to be given the experiences that we all need to align our energy with a better future. And so when we look at for example, the political conflicts and social conflicts, everybody is believing in their ideology. Everybody thinks that their answer is the right way to get to a better world. And so for many, not for everybody, but for many people, the intention is actually very good. It's noble. It's like they're trying to get to a good place, and this is the way they believe they will get there. But we also have to have the insight and the wisdom to say, but where will this path lead? Okay. So for example, if I think the world will be a better place if everybody respects everybody a whole lot more, but the way to get there is to kill and destroy all the people who are not being respectful, is that the pathway to that solution? So I might say, well, maybe marginalizing people and desocializing people and condemning people is not the right pathway to peace. But I'll only be able to appreciate that wisdom if I'm looking at it wholeheartedly and whole-mindedly from that kind of a consciousness space. Does that make sense? And so all of these experiences are there on the platform, trying to help each one of us make our own personal decisions, realizations, and growth so that we can get to a better place where we work cooperatively and everybody who's part of reality is part of the solution as well. And so when we understand that principle, then we'll make very rapid progress. And so we'll have a few trials and tribulations in the process of getting there. And the second thing is, and it ties so much into our earlier conversation, people have to learn to discern within themselves. Everybody has to understand we've all been lied to in all kinds of different ways. And so anything you believe may or may not be true. It's better to understand that and come to terms with that. So if you appreciate that, then you can start looking in a refined way about the nature of things and an understanding of things. If you're looking to social media, for example, for answers, you're going to always get a mishmash of truth mixed with lies, mixed with malintent, mixed with noble intent. There's going to be all kinds of things out there coming at you. So if you're going to take on doing that to yourself, you also have to have the filter to work through it in a really conscious way. And so if that's too much, don't take it on at all. Like if you can't look at it and do that, don't bother looking at it because it's just going to confuse you and mess you up. And so if we understand that, it'll kind of help us appreciate that, yeah, this is bad, this is difficult, it's challenging in all kinds of ways. We all understand that. But it has a purpose, and the timing of it is connected to the achievement of the purpose. And so if it were easier, maybe we wouldn't change things. If it were not as messy, maybe everything would stay the same. And staying the same is not good if we're trying to evolve into something better. So we have to go through this messy matrix in order to sort out all that stuff and then get to that better place. And so if we just appreciate it, even from that context, then it takes away some of the oppression and stress and anxiety of the experience itself. And we realize, okay, how is this helping me? How is this leading me to a better place? What can I do in the context of this energy to make a better world? And so if we start asking ourselves those questions and we get in alignment, you'll see very positive changes. There's always ebbs and flows to energy. And so things sometimes have to get very challenged and very difficult, and it'll get to what we call a breaking point. And then at that breaking point, there'll be a correction, there'll be a motivation, there'll be an energy of inspiration and an energy of change. And so the earth is being really tested right now for obvious reasons. If we look at the planet, but we'll get to a point where people will say, enough is enough. It's time now to restore something good. It's time to move through this and get to a better place. Not simply in reaction to what's happening, but from that place of deep, deep, luminous inspiration. And so we're on the threshold of that. We're kind of just there. And it's coming, and it's sooner. I say all that, then you might think, oh, it's 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. It's not. It's not tomorrow, but it's not 10 years from now either. It's happening. We're at the threshold of it, and there are going to be certain key experiences that happen on the planet in the next period of time that are going to help us make that alignment. And so the experiences will be shocking or difficult or sometimes enlightening and surprising and positive, but they'll all be a mishmash of things that are guiding this process and guiding us individually. And so within every year from here forward is the next year or two, some challenging issues. But as we move past this immediate window, things are going to start to feel different and feel better and feel more like we're going somewhere good. So just hang in there. Don't let the energy of these times bring you down. But take care of yourself.
Thank you, John. That was really well said. Thank you
You're welcome.
for sharing all of that. And I can't believe we're running out of time, but I wanted to really ask this question. So we'll see. We're going to try and get this in. Yeah, I know. And it's really up to you. I can go on a little longer, but it's up to you. It's about your time too.
Sure.
This question I have is many ancient traditions speak of the heart as the true center of divine connection. How do you see the Sacred Heart as a gateway to higher consciousness, the center of our deepest roots and most sacred aspirations?
Okay. Wow. Powerful question. So, when we look at ourselves as human beings, we can understand many things. So, we can look at ourselves, first of all, as a human entity, a person, personality, all this kind of stuff. We can appreciate that we have a physical body. And we can also appreciate that we have other functions, which are actually also energy bodies when we start understanding things like the emotional body, the mental body, etc. And we have energy centers in our body called chakras, the root chakra, solar plexus, creative chakra, the heart, the throat, the third eye, the crown. And so we have energy centers in our body that have certain spiritual and energetic functional correlations. So these are all part of the design of being a human being, and they're all part of our natural or innate energy anatomy, if you will. And so when we appreciate that, we start to understand that as human beings, we're a composite of all kinds of things. We're a physical reality with emotional experiences, with mental thoughts, beliefs, the whole mental structure of being a human being. And we're spiritual. We have a light in us, a consciousness, a divinity that is within us that runs the whole machine, if you will, that operates all of this. We live in a world where we're very focused at the solar plexus, the power level of creation, the third chakra, and we're moving to a space of unity, which is really the heart center. And so if you think about your heart, it's the part of our energy anatomy that connects the upper three chakras and the lower three chakras. The crown, the third eye, and the throat, all of these like divine, powerful creation centers connect with the solar plexus, the creative sexual center, and the root chakra, which are the human side of the equation. And so the heart is the midpoint. Because we live in a really 3D solar plexus kind of level consciousness, the mind seems to be the most powerful tool. But the mind is a tool of consciousness. The mind is not the origin of consciousness. In fact, it's our soul that comes into our body using the mind and our mental functions to live and create a reality. So it's a powerful, honorable, important aspect of ourselves as human beings, but it's not the epicenter and it's not the most important thing. The soul can be thought of at the level of the heart. It's where we start to live in a conscious way in relationship to all those other elemental forces. So, for example, a person whose heart is awakened operates in the world very differently than someone whose heart is completely shut and they're full of fear and wounds and restrictions of different kinds. Can you understand how that relationship would take place? So, part of the personal healing journey is to get ourselves to the space where we're living with an open heart and we've healed the wounds that pull us out of that frame of reference. That's kind of like healing in a nutshell. And so the heart becomes the place where the world of spirit and the world of form meet. It's where they connect. And so the higher centers of energy are all part of a spiritual reality, if you will, but it's in the heart that they merge or meet with the physical reality in the physical world. And so as we evolve and grow as spiritual beings, we're learning to live from a heart centered consciousness. We still have a very operational mind. We still have the ability to create things and do things that require mental engagement. We still have emotions, and reactions and experiences and all those kinds of things. But the heart becomes the compass or the guiding point. And so if I'm centered there in my personal evolution, I'm centered there in my healing, that's how I begin to operate in the world. And so that's why this healing journey we talk about so much becomes important to us. Because if we can get to that space, then that's how we show up in the world. And then that becomes the contribution we're making to the future. We're healing the past, if you will, or the wounds of the past. And so the heart becomes the bridge. It's the place where spirit and matter meet. And it's where we begin to create in the material world from a really unified higher consciousness perspective. And so this is why it's so foremost in spiritual traditions to teach about the heart and the attributes of the heart, the courage of the heart, the compassion of the heart, the wisdom of the heart, the love of the heart, the integrity of the heart. So we start to learn how these principles and attributes that are really founded in that level, if you will, of consciousness are really the place where we begin to create a different kind of a world. And so that's why it's so important in spiritual teachings and why it's so important in our own personal development as well. So I just kind of want to quickly bridge all that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I think that was really important. And it does bring us back to everything you've been speaking of today. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And because we are running out of time, I can't believe we went through this so quickly. It feels like we just started. I wanted to have you give us a brief description on your free offering that you have for everybody today.
For sure. So whenever I speak, Amanda, I always like to give a little opportunity for a gift. What I do is I have a little contest. So people can enter the contest, submit their email or whatever, and then Spirit will choose 3 people from the submissions to be given a gift of the Unity Field Healing audio package. It's the healing work I do. People can read all about it or learn all about it on the website. But the gift is to receive the 3 audio packages of the program to do the healing work themselves. And so I encourage everybody to jump in, and Spirit will guide that process. And 3 lucky people will be the recipients. And but everybody can learn about the work and benefit from it, or purchase the work too, and all that kind of stuff. So it's available to everybody, but the gift will be for the 3 people who win.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this generous offering. And everybody can find the link to John's free gift underneath this interview. So please check it out. And before we go, before we wrap up, is there any last words of wisdom you have for us today? And where can we find you online?
Sure. Um, these are very trying times. So there's it just needs to be said. People need to understand that, and that's the nature of this moment in time. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling anxious, it's really all because of the nature of the energy of what's happening right now in these times. So it's very understandable. It's not forever. It's not a permanent transition. It's just a transition in time. So don't let the weight and the stress and the apparent overwhelm of everything knock you off your balance and knock you off your feet. And if it does, that's okay too. Just take the time you need to recover, to get your balance back, to get your center back, and to get realigned and continue moving forward. Don't let it wash you into the ocean. In other words, let the wave kind of move over you, and then find yourself again standing on the shore, standing tall, standing strong, and being ready to participate in the future. Never believe that you don't have a role to play. That's never true. Everybody has a role to play, and you just have to go through the process of finding yours. And when you look back and think about it, of all the times we've lived in our lives, Amanda, it's always the stressful, challenging, difficult times that somehow teach us about the attributes we didn't know we had. Like, where did we learn about courage? It was not from being fed ice cream by a happy person. It was when we had to make a very difficult decision and we were petrified to do it, and yet we did it because we found the courage to do it. So it's a good analogy for understanding the energy and the purpose of these times. We'll look back at this and realize the stress and energy and challenge of it refined us. It strengthened us. It actually made us stronger, more aware, more noble, more aligned. And we're going to use this experience to grow and mature. So don't misunderstand the energy of it or the light and power you have within you to navigate it and find your way through it. And reach out in any way to help others of like mind to kind of get through the process, whatever that takes for you. The self-care part of it cannot be overemphasized. I really really want to highlight that. For the work I do personally, it's mostly healing work at this point. I'm mostly a teacher because I have a whole international community of practitioners of the work I do. There are lots of practitioners who do sessions and work with people online. There's a practitioner listing page online. Starting next month, we're going to do the very first teachers training. So we're going to have teachers who can teach and initiate practitioners in the work as well. So it's a whole growing body of spiritual support and development that's there for people. I do monthly transmissions with the Syrian, so people can learn all about that online. I won't take time to explain it all, but people can read about it on the website. And so people are certainly free to sign up and register for those and participate in those meditations and things. So there's lots of gifts and tools that are there for people through the work that I'm doing as well as many other incredible luminous beings all around the world. So
Thank you so much, John. And thank you for all the work you're doing. Like it's always so nice to connect with you and see what's happening. And yeah, you just have such great words of wisdom and support for everybody. So thank you so much for sharing and being with us today.
truly my privilege and my honor to do that, Amanda. Thank you so much.
I want to thank our audience for being here with us today, um, taking in these words of wisdom. I hope this has helped you in your journey and help support you in where you're going. Thank you so much once more for being with us, and I look forward to seeing you all again. So much love and light. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you all soon.